Chapter 4, The Nest. Allow me to share why and how birds became symbols for the knowings process. In order to survive, birds must adapt to their surroundings. If they don't adapt, they risk extinction. Adaptations have been a result of the environment that they live in or are migrating to. You can't take a parrot from the Caribbean and hope it survives in the wild in the Canadian North. It won't. It would take time and a slow acclimatization if it were to happen. It means if they can adapt, the result is going to be positive for their future success. If they don't adapt to environmental change, they lose their ability to hunt for their basic needs like food and shelter. I think this is why I'm so attracted to birds. Why, in quiet observation, they always stand out to me. And I think this is also why I'm able to understand why so many people fear them. Birds are swift. They move consciously, they move quietly, or they squawk loudly. Sometimes they are like an annoyance or an intrusion to the environment. The pictures in my kitchen of a great horned owl and a bluebird and a blue jay remind me every day to tune into some of the meanings that I've associated with them, drawn from various myths and faiths and stories and traditions, and I'm able to very carefully and sacredly craft the impact and meaning for me. I think in this time of looking for signs and being careful not to analyze too much, we can get lost in the middle of attaching on to somebody else's idea or meaning of what it is. I see a lot of people who don't align with or reject in faith what they were raised in, and they move towards more of the indigenous or natural creation stories. In some of this, I see strong attachments to some of the meanings that come up, but I'm always curious how people hold on to one thing when really, in the world, we can observe so many things. To me, the blue jay represents a kind of messenger. It has this powerful presence, and if animated, it looks like the bird that would deliver me a letter. I see blue jays when I'm really stuck in my logic place and I'm overthinking, and it's like they appear to remind me to soften a little bit, and I can wrap up my thoughts and move on. I find them to come and go quickly. Sometimes I can't even see their flight path. They're so quick. Where I live, they really blend in with the sky, so as soon as they leave the dark green trees, I lose them in the clouds. I've connected to the bluebird in a very sacred, special way. The bluebird first came to me as my assignment as Miss Baxter was back in my life, and I called my first intuitive business Divine Bluebird when I started to feel signs from her. One sign came through the two blue jays that came to visit me when I was asking for a sign if I should get the townhouse that was in direct view of her old house. Another time, a divine bluebird came as I was ready to tee off in Waterton on the back nine, on the 14th hole, I think, and it was about 3 feet in front of me and just hovered there, as though it was trying to tell me something. It was there long enough that I couldn't go through with my shot, and I had to wait. I looked back to see if my two friends also noticed it was there, and they did. It was somewhat of a miracle moment, and none of us had seen this bird anywhere in this environment or on this course before. And my friend, an avid golfer who spends her summers there, had also never seen one. We've actually seen more grizzly bears on that course than birds since the park burnt down a few years ago. Birds really came to life for me when I made them into archetypes, or meanings, for the different areas between this program. I find birds to be a nice association to each one of the stages here, as everyone globally can connect with the kind of bird, or one similar to it, from their environment. It's one of those unique things we can all relate to. Every day, I have a coffee at the same time Miss Baxter was probably pouring her first vodka. I called one of her foremost spiritual life center students while researching for this book. She confirmed that Miss Baxter drank a 26-ounce bottle a day, probably at school while teaching me, but no judgment. I was high too. Every day I sit and think about where she is now, and how I still feel her presence. Every single day I think about the seeds she planted for me to discover, teaching me of angels and messengers of light and God. It seems like I'm talking to her in my head, and there's also a knowing I'm connecting to her on another level. Sometimes I talk to her out loud. Sometimes I feel her around me. Other times I doubt what I know is true. See, I know she's there, even though she's not there. I know she hears me, even though she's not here to hear me. I know she's advising me, even though I hear her through a different channel. I know she loves me because I feel it. I know she feels it when I say thank you or I love you. I call this place where she and I meet the nest. The nest is a place within us. It's in me and it's in you. We've all been gifted access to the nest with our first breath we were given when we came to birth here, and we leave this body of ours in the last breath we take here on earth. The nest is the life we've been given. Knowings is a remembering, a reminding of where we came from and the source of the whispers in the nest. Those cautionary feelings of warnings come from this source. No matter the faith or belief system people choose to believe, the knowings is at the heart of each one. That source of inner love and protection when you're all alone and something says, just keep going. It's that. It's the nest. Everyone has access to this inner source or higher power. There's no cage or key. It's where we have access to all the sources of energy, light, knowings, and wisdom. It's where we can ask unseen things for support that strengthen our knowings muscle. OwlSeek is a journey on how to communicate more clearly and consciously with our inner self, the place where subconscious thoughts are formed and conscious thoughts are considered. Intuition and logic are here to work together, like our soul self and our ego self. It's where your logic informs your knowing and your knowing trumps logic. It's where we create imaginary locks and keys within our mind and our logic, fear-filled selves. We put people in place who lead groups of people or societies or religious movements, and we give them the power to have the key to open it for us. And that's giving away our own access to the higher inner gifts and noticings we all have. The nest is where we leave things we're done with and need to release, need to let go, need to surrender, and need to ask for help opening the cages we've locked part of ourselves in. See, nests aren't cages. Cages are constructs of our minds. Nests are the quiet sanctuaries of our hearts. Nests are purposeful, intentional, and necessary. Nests are personal. Nests are safety, shelter, nurturing, for birthing. Nests are for giving life and for releasing back in the wild. Nests create new life and sustain life. Nests are sometimes where things in life come to an end, too. Nests are for rest and sometimes for long sabbaticals. Nests are for retreats. Nests are for knowings. The knowings method is about who we are. Overall, it tries to remove gender and talk about who we are more in terms of energy, or connecting to the natural world, and metaphors and meanings and connections, and signs between ourselves and nature, the animal kingdom or the natural world. We find this throughout time and history, and thousands of texts from all over the world connecting us to the same lessons or stories. The knowings method takes us through the 7 stages, the 7 principles from fear to love that move us back to a place closer to our intuition, closer to love. Each one of the principles is represented by an archetype of a bird. Fear is represented by the caged bird. Pride is represented by the peacock. Courage is represented by the raven. Knowings is represented by the owl. Forgiveness is represented by the swan. Grace is represented by the white dove. Love is represented by the eagle. When learning the knowings method, it's important to understand that there are different feelings and emotions at each level, and that when we become aware of the principle, we can understand how to get to the next level or learn the next principle. But this is not about moving through the levels and just completing something. In fact, that won't work whatsoever. Knowings is about learning each stage and becoming aware of each stage and accepting that we are all the stages and all the principles that guide our life and unite us. When we become aware of this, we become aware of the nest. We can be all or none of the stages with every breath we take. The nest is the sacred place we go to reflect and heal and meditate and discern and pray and listen. When we become aware of the nest, we can become aware of which one of the principles we need to retreat with and work with in that moment. The point of learning the Knowings program and the understanding of the flow of the method is understanding we can take our healing into our own hands and create a sacred, safe space for it. At the core of everything is the nest, the knowing. This is the God and all-knowing universal source energy, the vibration at the center of love and fear. This is where you see the signs. This is where you get the owl's eye view, because the knowing is the inner owl. Then it expands into rays of love, fear, forgiveness, courage, pride, and fear. They're all connected. They root back to the nest. Birds of the 7 intuitive principles. I started spending a lot of time on my own after my separation. I was living on my own, and thanks to the pandemic, the powers of the world decided we should shut down for a few months at a time, on and off for 2 years. My house backs onto a forest, so I would escape down to my nest in the Little Crow's Nest Pass. In the past, Susie, who owns the coffee shop and fly fish shop and also happens to be my fly fishing guide Al's partner, and Dawn, who owns the B&B, are like wisdom women to me. They take care of me down there as I rest as a wary traveler. They open their nest to me. Over those few years, I spent a lot of time driving rural roads. It's all I could do, alone. I needed out of my home that became a cage if I stayed inside too long, talking to myself or telling Netflix I'm still watching. I started noticing things, different things. I started noticing birds, and I started referring back to them and what others told me they meant, and what I felt they meant. When my grandpa passed, he wanted On Eagle's Wings played at his funeral. I can't listen to it without crying. I imagine him soaring with God up there in heaven. It represented something to him that was strong and mighty and intentional. It knew what it was doing. It knew what it needed to do. It represents strength and greatness. Sometimes we would want to fly into the afterlife with. These birds started to come to me after my grandpa died. I started noticing more eagles that reminded me of him, and some herons, birds he loved too. The more I noticed, the more they spoke to me. The birds for this model started revealing themselves to me slowly over time. I would see a sign or notice something that led me to a clue to describe or move closer to what's next. The cage bird is from my own words in my journal. Whenever I was caged, I was in a self-imposed prison. I put myself there. I acted as if I was there, locked in, when I was the holder of the key. The association is to fear and force, a place in the mind that cowers under repeating or spinning thoughts. The peacock is represented by the male and the female. The association is to pride and ego, which has two sides. We will always have pride and ego, and it's our job to have a healthy balance with them, and not have any part of it be on colorful display at all times. When we're acting in our pride and leading with our ego, trying to force our way on others, it's as obnoxious as a peacock's squawk, like walking into a wall of feathers that cannot be passed without getting nipped. It's more of a loud, boisterous presence and annoyance. There are two sides to pride and ego, though. There's more of the showboating side and posturing and squawking, and then the other meeker, more life-giving side. The life-giving side, the female, is usually behind the scenes quietly. The life-giving side to pride and ego is also behind the scenes. The secret to balancing it is having a harmonious swing on the pendulum, and is also to acknowledge ego is with us. It's not going anywhere, and we always have two ways to present it. It can be like a wall that stops us, or a curious, life-giving experience. The raven represents courage, and it's about the courage to shift your perspective. There are many stories associating with these birds, like the crow, with a certain kind of darkness. Just due to its appearance, there is a story that casts it as dark, ominous, and mysterious, almost like it's up to something. What we don't know or have forgotten is that within these species, there's also white ravens and white crows. They're very rare, and the ones I'm talking about do not have the albino gene. They're the same bird, just like with different colors. My point here is that when we see a blackbird, we cast a judgment or story about what it's up to. We cast a prejudice. And my question is, do you have the courage to shift your perspective and see it through the eyes of rarity and wonder, and that there's other things that can challenge us, in a good way? Like knowing if we saw a white raven, we wouldn't say that it's here in an eerie place or it's up to something. We wouldn't feel a certain chill of fear wondering if it's bringing an omen. Courage is about seeing things from another perspective. The owl is for knowing, the inner place of quietude and wisdom. When I started tracking owls and trying to find them, the days I was chasing or trying to force it, I didn't see any. When I went for a walk and trusted my inner compass was guiding me to where I needed to go, I found them. Yet I had a noticing, a pattern I saw. Every single owl I saw was looking at me first. When I noticed it, it was already watching me. Some moved their heads in a way that was curious and confused, almost like, what took you so long? The owl and the nest are the same place, that heart center within, that inner voice or inner place that's calling you. It sees you first. You need to show up on the path and head in that direction to listen differently. The swan is for forgiveness. To forgive is two parts. One is to acknowledge the pain, and the second is to surrender it and let go. The surrender part we can do, but surrendering is a co-creation. It's a giving and receiving, a reciprocity of sorts. See, a true complete heart made by two swans coming together is about partnership. That's true and complete forgiveness. Part of us comes to the table and offers what happened, and the other part is giving it to something else. That source energy to take away and deal with it. The two parts also represent the logic side and the intuition side. The logic side wants to keep it, fight it, win it, revenge with it, and hold on to the misery. The intuitive side is coaxing quietly to release the anger, frustration, and talks you're having in your head and just let go. There's another way through if you have the courage and you don't have to hold on to things that hurt you. You can let them go and hold boundaries for your pond and what you allow into it. The dove is for grace. Grace is a mysterious thing, and the fact we have white doves for purity in weddings, celebrations, and memorials is also something we let fly into the unknown is like grace. We have to let go and rise above anything that would hold us back from flying free. We need to release any ties to things to free ourselves to be spirit and God-led, allowing us to feel differently than when we were trying to force and control life to happen our way, out of fear. The dove is documented in Egyptian history, 5,000 plus years ago, and similar accounts of gifting or releasing doves can be found in ancient Chinese, Greek, Roman, and European texts. The eagle revealed to me that it represented love. One day, traveling home from the pass, reflecting on the nest and theories tying to each bird, an eagle flew alongside my passenger window. As I was driving, I saw it flying, almost as though it wanted to get my attention. I pulled over and started my camera. It started to fly in a circle around the field it landed on, and the higher it got, the wider the spiral it created got. It flew and flew, higher and higher, towards the clouds and the sun. After 6 minutes, I lost sight of it in the sun, and it disappeared into illuminated brilliance. It was shining like love. It was curious to me, too. Why did it fly so high where there's nowhere to perch, nothing to eat, and nowhere to go? Why did it keep gaining momentum to go higher? Did it go as high as it could go? Love is like that when it's truly felt. It's expansive. It's elusive. Not just love in a romantic relationship, but the essence of the greatest power of love. The essence of the feeling that's higher than any other, just because. The essence that disappears and will reappear another time with a knowing of why it did what it did. We can connect our emotional states to the birds, too. Eagles have exceptional self-control and peace. They're very intentional and strategic. Grace is about a kindness and gentleness to yourself, and forgiveness is about learning patience in the process of surrender and letting go. Some of these things are elusive, like doves flying away quickly or swans floating slowly, but they're there. When we feel like we're in a place we trust, co-create with spirit or God or others, we can be free. We are safe and rested and informed in the nest, and we can listen differently to what our next steps are to be. We can express ourselves using words that align with how we see ourselves from a higher perspective. We can embody those higher vibration terms that we don't quite feel yet that we are in, and we can lean into it and try it on for a while. We feel illuminated, like the golden tree. We are lighting the way for ourselves and others who come to our light. We are feeling connected to God or a source energy, like we're on the right path, noticing signs and clues to guide us to what's next. Words you can use when you're experiencing life from a higher perspective or illumination. Guided by source energy, too powerful to be named. Knowing that source energy is available to anyone and everyone if they choose. People call it God, creator, gods, universe, stars, ethers. Illuminated brilliance, natural leadership feels good, but can't explain it. Love, peace, joy, kindness, gentleness, goodness, faithfulness, patience, self-control. Bliss, enlightened on the path, in flow. Surrender, knowing there's a way to trust and to do prayer and meditation. Signs and noticings, knowing we must listen differently to the markers on the way. When we're feeling stuck in our lives and we're resting in the ease of what's easy because we're too lazy to work towards anything else, we're stagnant. This laziness could come from many things, but what I often find with clients is it comes from a place of complacency, feeling like giving up for no reason, or because it's hard. It's supposed to be hard. It is hard, and it will be hard again. The pivot points of those who have the courage to push through that place of uncertainty and not knowing into a place of knowing is courage. The pivot point is in the choice and decision. One breath. One chance to shift your perspective and life path. Or not. When we choose to stay stuck, we stay in a place that's beneath our skills and abilities, a place where our confidence is shot, and we question every thought and move to stay paralyzed in a fear of making any decision. We choose to keep a mask on and fake life. We don't thrive. We don't grow. We stay in spin cycles that make us feel sick, like we're digging a bigger hole every day. So we put ourselves in the cage and we numb it out. We cope. We drown ourselves in alcohol or numb out with drugs or gambling. We overstimulate with cheap versions of the real thing with food and sex and feeling unsatisfied every time we have a binge or secret hookup and it's over. Then we spin into fear of getting caught, getting honest, feeling the source of the pain, or overdoing it in some way that hurts other people more than it's hurting us. We act like victims, like it's happening to us, and we seek pity and make up stories to cover the fact we're capable of more. We choose to keep feeding the dark side and its evil plans to attach to our minds with obsessions and addictions and lust. We act from a place of fear, often getting our peacock feathers up and reminding people not to pass. We speak highly of ourselves from a place of pride and ego, masking the pain under the surface of not being good enough, smart enough, or attractive enough. And we stay there, behind the bars in our own isolation, withdrawing from the world, while over and over we have the opportunity to change something, see life from a higher perspective, and let go of what's no longer serving us. Words you can use when you're experiencing life from a stagnant perspective, in the cage or spinning. Caged feathers. Feathers are up, unwilling to see things differently. Self-guided, won't let any other insights or perspectives or opinions in. Self-sabotage, self-harm, abusing self, harmful self-talk, resentful. Pride, ego, shadow self, dark night of the soul, evil, or dark side. Anxious, angst, angry, inner battles, inner fights, isolate, withdrawn. Blame, regret, revenge, hate, retaliation, humiliation, shame. Acting out, coping with alcohol, drugs, obsessions, secrets, double lives. Fuck-its, numb out, separate from heart, catastrophes in the mind. The mask, defend the logic of why. Block the feeling of knowing you need to change. It's fascinating to me that feelings of anxiety or fear are also about withdrawal. These typically come with a sense of grief and regret of getting out of the places where you're so ashamed and humiliated, you blame other people, and feel a sense of guilt and heaviness. The lower vibration of heaviness, and it's a caged feeling. There's a heaviness to being caged. Caged is usually not by choice, but something has a grasp over us with the door closed until we decide to ask, how do I get out of here? However, we can only hear what we need to do when we get to the nest. You can get to the nest, but you don't always stay there. We just tune in and know it's there. You get to align with whatever belief system or club or group you ascribe to. It's different for everybody, but to be optimistic and willing is to see all of us here, while our belief systems are all different, can get to a higher vibration place that works for each of us. Thus, we can move each other to a higher vibrational place just by being together, because we understand that there's more meaningful experiences out there for us that we didn't see before we tuned into that wisdom. But in our wisdom, we start to attract better. And when we start to attract better, we start to do better. We start to do different things because they don't feel stuck anymore. We move to a place where maybe we understand that we lacked a sense of discipline or understanding or connection that what we were doing before. We realized we were doing it out of fear and not a place of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, or self-control. So when we're applying this in our lives personally, our lives professionally start to shift as well. That's why OwlSeek applies to leadership as well once we get to a place of knowing. Being in the nest, we then see there's a greater path ahead. The path ahead has come to a place of transcendence. We accept there's another way forward. We accept that we don't have to hold on to a previous thought pattern, such as negative, dark thought pattern, that wasn't serving us. Maybe it connects with all the languages you use, like ball and chain, or being tied to something in the metaphysical world. We can see old ways for what it was, or what it is. Its cords detach and we let it go. You surrender and let go. You hope, you pray, you understand that something else is out there for you, and it will be revealed to you when it's time, and when you're in the state of manifesting versus a state of forcing. Manifesting in the nest. As I mentioned, I have a great horned owl picture in my kitchen from a photographer in the Okotoks area. I imagine him to be some kind of old farmer who also likes to bird watch. I really love his handmade frames. They're rustic and wooden with rounded corners, and his pictures of birds, while simple, are very clear and have sharp meanings for me. I put the great horned owl picture in my kitchen before I actually saw one in the wild. I'd seen some in sanctuaries or at the zoo, but it's not the same as attracting something in the wild. My first practice with retreating to the nest to manifest something in the wild was with grizzly bears, and then black bears. I would imagine seeing them, and then they would appear. And it was never irrational, never harmful. It was never anything I cast off as dark energy. It was being in the flow to magnetize and attract what I put my mind to first. I do this with animals because I think it's a safe, reciprocal energy exchange with Mother Nature. I think if I'm a good conservationalist and steward of the land, I'll be shown the gifts of the land. But it humiliates my sons when I go around picking up garbage. I root this practice in some of the wanderers and pioneers before me, so to speak, who spent time out walking the trails, taking notes, and keeping handwritten journals of all the animals and insects and plants and mountain ranges and water pathways they saw, just like Kaya did in Where the Crawdads Sing, 2018. I find this kind of mapping and tracking fascinating, and I believe we can do it in our own mind with our own thoughts and reconfigure the trails back to where we were called to go. I believe some of this observation and looking from the nest is us being able to see the trails or pathways we put forth. And when we get to that 30,000 foot or 50,000 foot view of our life, we can see there's actually another way. To see it head on, to see it spiral upward, to see the expansive growth. But we can't do it without spending time testing what we thought to be true. I find that often the greatest disconnection for people is trying to force what's not true on what they want to be true. We have to unlearn to learn. It's a process and requires some intention to have a good look at what parts of yourself you're willing to surrender. What are you willing to let go of so you can welcome in what's next for you? I was taught there's a big difference between law of attraction and manifestation. People have the ability to force their will or their way on law of attraction and move them forward a little bit faster. Law of attraction is about declaring and putting your attention on something and finding a logical way to make it yours. Manifesting is about co-creating and surrendering what you're asking for from the universe and letting God do the work. You keep strong in your prayer and you ask, and you carve out time for meditation, listening, to hear what you're supposed to do or clues to follow. Watching for signs and noticing things on the path are big parts of manifesting. As nature has patterns in the forest, life can create patterns for us to see when we turn our attention towards something else and are open to welcoming in another way. Manifesting happens when we let go and have the courage to say, I want this, but I don't know how it's going to come to me. Manifesting is when we put little symbols or objects around us and say, show me more on your time, to God, universe, or the Creator, and the energy that is. The energy that is the source of light for all of us, and that is the source of breath for us. Show me more about this. I'm curious. I'm here as a student. I want to talk to others and teach others about what I'm finding, but I also want to learn. So when I brought this picture frame of the owl and I wanted to manifest seeing one in the wild, I knew I needed to manifest it in my mind first. A phrase I'd been reflecting on is faith without works is dead. It reminded me that if I had the belief system I could see it, I needed to go back and do the work, the research, and the inquiry into the how. That Miss Baxter taught me. I have to show up halfway when it comes to manifesting. So I started seeing it in my kitchen first. I started researching where it appears in the wild, and where it appears in the summer, the spring, the fall, and the winter. And then I told a friend. I told this friend that I wanted to go see an owl in the wild, and he laughed at me a little bit. But he also knew the power and intention of my mind. We went on a road trip together to a colony a couple hours away to get some handmade products and some organic food. On the way back, we got lost. I had said we were going to see this owl together. Lo and behold, I was in the passenger seat while we were driving and had my eyes glued to the window in the cold, freezing rain. The kind of wind that whips your face and feels like it's slapping you. It was that kind of day. Then I saw the tail feathers of an owl sticking out on a property. I asked my friend to reverse because I thought I saw it. I didn't know for sure. He gave me a, "Yeah, right, Jill," look, and we backed up. As soon as he saw it, he said, "Holy shit, you did it." When we got to the property, there were 2 owls. It was an old, abandoned property, and I still can't figure out what happened on this property. The foundation of a house is left, but everything else is gone. You walk up the 3 front steps to where the door would have been, and the metal railing is still there, and then it drops into a 15-foot hole in the ground. There was garbage strewn around and empties. There's also active honeycombs planted, so I know somebody's there, possibly the colonies. There's also a Quonset and a broken-down vehicle on the property. I felt like we were being watched by someone else, not just the owls, so I was careful. All I wanted to do was photograph and connect with the owls in the wild, and I'm not sure why they called me to this place that I can't get to unless I go to the pin in my GPS and I literally drive into the middle of nowhere, heading east into the prairies of Alberta, down 2 hours of dirt roads with hundreds of windmills, wind farms no longer producing agriculture, but creating energy. I got back to visit these owls a couple times, and one of them is a gray great horn. The other is a juvenile white great horn, and they seem to live together. The older owl had something happen to one of its eyes. I've gotten close enough with my photos to see it's recovered, but it just doesn't look right. Only one of the eyes is that piercing yellow color. He looks older. He's been there a while. They live in one of the old barns on the property. I saw them in the window just like the images in the magazines before I saw them in real life, sitting and looking out. When I peeked in my head in the barn, it was the first time I saw an owl fly towards me with their feet out in front. It must have seen or known I was coming first. As I observed the intention of its eyes and the force of its claws and what it could take from me if it was actually to get a hold of me, it wanted out the door as fast as I wanted in, and we scared each other. So I left its environment before it came out. I felt like I was trespassing on it. Still, it's one of the most miraculous things I've ever seen. Learning about a species and its environment when the species is watching you before you see it is just fascinating. Retreat. Even as a child, I was attracted to nature. The very first picture that was turned into a painting of me is from when I was about 4 or 5 years old. I'm hand-feeding a worm to a little robin in this tiny corner at a property we lived on. Our house in New Dundee, Ontario, had a fence of bushes around it. I found the bushes so comforting to retreat to, as they were like a wall between the sidewalk on the other side and our property. I loved to go down there and camp out. I'd watch people come out from their shift work at the creamery across the street. That feeling is still one of my favorites. I can honestly say that for about a decade, I didn't tune in to how important it was for me to go back to that place. This place is not only a place of peace and calm and letting my imagination run wild. It's a place of being able to attract things that are of this other world. Being able to be so peaceful and calm that a bird is attracted to you is a thing. Now, I've also had other experiences as a child, like being attacked or shat on by seagulls, and that's a different kind of attraction because the pendulum has always the potential to swing in either direction. There's a painting in my room to help me remember my inner child and how innocent and curious she was, and how every day when I wake up, I want to see it and embody that spirit of what I do. I also want to be cautious and cared for, in a sense, as I go through the world as a woman in my 40s. The only way I can do that is to tune into a higher power. That's where I find the arms of spirit so intense, and if I can tune into it, they'll wrap around us and keep us safe. When I'm wandering out in the forest now, there's all kinds of things I fear, like a group of grizzlies walking out, and that's been something I've experienced. It's something that's so profound that I find people who come from retreats are also able to tune back in, because somehow we lose it. Somehow, when we stay under the spiritual ceiling of the world, we aren't able to get out of our own energy, our intuition, and our vibration to that place that attracts things like this. In some cases, people get to a place where they actually repel it. And if something comes near, they're in a constant state of swatting it away or kicking it. These are people who abuse animals because they can't talk or fight back. It's like having lost our self-control in our rage. That's the other side of the pendulum of this little girl in the photo. The inner rage is a place that means we're so far from the place of inner calm. Now I can say with all honesty, that's not something we master, we pray away, or lose. We will always have both, and it's up to our self-control and practice to calm the rage and manage and live with it. This is something we learn to accept, manage, and live with. This place of inner rage will rise, and that's why Knowing's method is circular and cyclical and fluid. We can test it, apply it, adjust it, and repeat it. Because we go into the nest, we know what skills and tools to grab, we know what to do. Then we go out into the world and we approach it. We constantly need to remind ourselves of what's in that nest. If we're blocked at one of the 7 points, we can dive deeper into why we're in fear, or lacking courage, or unable to let go, or choosing lust over love, and so on. What's in that safe corner of the bushes that we can retreat? What is in the wisdom that we can gather there? Where is the light that we can get our energy source from? What kinds of things can we observe in nature and how they're getting through challenges and challenging times, and how can we too? What kinds of noticings and discoveries can we have with this approach to something so innocent, like a child and a little bird? How can we approach other things that might teach us deeper lessons about our relationships, our societies, and our work? While we can go away to nature and far-off lands to retreat, we can also retreat on the metaphysical level where people claim, like monks to an ashram, they can go in their mind. This is where people go do a 40-day vision quest or 40 days of going into the wilderness or going into retreat to go into self. However, some can also take this too far. I saw a woman in the days following Christmas this year. Her daughter called for an emergency appointment. She was heartbroken. In the days before Christmas, her son, who was in her 20s, went to sleep on the couch and didn't wake up. No drugs, no alcohol, but something was wrong with his heart, and he chose not to seek help. She wept, telling me the last thing she said to him was, "I don't want anything to happen to you," and she went to bed. And then it happened. A year ago, her husband also passed of something heart-related. She was in deep grief and deep loss. Her faith had moved to YouTube teachings of self-proclaimed professors talking about the 2D, 3D, and 5D worlds, how we are part of expansive programs and systems, and so on. She was in the clouds, rooted in nothing. Her life for 15 years was raising her 3 children with her traveling pastor husband who had her living an entirely different belief system, including doctrines of telling in the Baptist communities in the southern states. These are some of the worst kinds of man-made rules and ways to conform, ways that totally go against the grain of natural state of what we know versus what we're told. She hadn't been listening for a long time. I counseled her on my couch in my home as she wept. We brought the pendulum back to the metal, instead of hooked on the fear side of telling and curiosity. Somewhere we have to land in something. Somewhere we have to root. Somewhere we have to decide a new set of thoughts, beliefs, and actions are true, a new nest. Her daughter texted me the next day and said there was a transformational change in her mom after seeing me. They made it to the funeral home after seeing me to plan their second family funeral in a year. Now it's up for her to keep the pendulum swinging and know that inner nest place and breathe into possibility of new life. The nest is where there's retreat and where there's people who go quiet. The mystics before us retreated to the wilderness, sat quietly, lived modestly, and devoted their lives to a source. They believed and had faith it would provide for them. Some did it in ritual and tradition, others did it on their own, following their visions. They'd go to find that connection between what they were told and what they believed about God. 3 deep breaths. There's a secret to getting into the nest, and it's through your breath. That's right, your breath. To access the door differently, you have to calm your central nervous system and shift your listening. For most people, this can be done with 3 deep breaths. The first breath grounds you, gets you balanced, brings the pendulum back to center. The second breath releases the stress you're carrying that's not yours. Releases what's added to your shoulders and your plate and your thoughts as expectations by others. The third breath tunes you into you. Your central nervous system comes down and your breathing slows. Since there's been a large exhale, you can rest into you. You're now ready to listen differently. Who's with you in the nest? Who is the knowings? Some say God, or gods, or Source, or Allah, or Yahweh, or the great I am. And for many, it's the universe. For the sake of this book, choose the term that works for you. In this method, no one name is greater than any others, although one energy is greater. We all have access, we all have opportunity, and we all have the right. We all have the choice, this or that. In fact, I align with more what Lao Tzu said. If you can name it, that's not it. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. Lao Tzu. If you can name it, it's just too small, too weak, and it's just a concept. The real thing, the real God, creator, universe, or whatever you want to call it, cannot be named. It can only be felt. The OwlSeek method is about diving into your own life and doing some analytical journaling around it, and testing your theories on yourself, your values, your mindset, your essence, and then feeling into it. Carl Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist and the father of analytical psychology, developed a theory on the collective unconscious. His studies in his own journals from 1914 to 1930 created ways to measure what he was experiencing. Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people. To quote Jung, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." Carl Jung. OwlSeek is data for your soul, an analytical look at your choices and beliefs and see if what you're doing is aligning with who you're called to be. It's a look at what is coming and where it's coming from, likely an unconscious state or story you've attached onto to make true. OwlSeek is your way, aligned and connected to a higher power or source energy. The practice of Carl Jung's methods or analysis are just as important as the practice of connecting with source of information and moving forward, not just staying in observation. You can find the data of your soul and see where your growth is and where your stagnancy is, and map out how to turn desire into plans. I believe many get lost in the conformity of organized religions which promise salvation in their own ways. There are thousands of ways to a path to the same place that Jung and many mystics before him talked about. People get lost when they follow man-made, man-led movements and doctrines. It's lost in the direct deposit membership, like God on auto ship, and we're too shameful to cancel the delivery. People lose connection with themselves and connection to their souls when they move away from who they really are and get lost or stuck and give their power to the belief or energy of someone or something else. People also get lost in the wearing of the masks or trying to hide who they really are for the sake of being like everyone else, not wanting to ruffle feathers and not wanting to be too much of themselves, especially when it goes against the grain of what everyone else is doing just to fit in. We get weak and dependent on things we're trying to force that don't fit, things that others say or do, books or classes, following gurus, or buildings like temples and churches. The greatest gift in understanding of the knowings model and the OwlSeek method and applying them to your own life, once you've removed your unconscious bias and prejudices, and honestly reflecting on what's not working. Only then can the door swing open in another way, a lighter way, where we're more alike than we're different. There's no destination with this model. There's only an understanding of the basic principles that the only constant is change. The knowings is about breathing into the now, the present, the feeling of where you're at. Knowings is love, grace, forgiveness, knowings, courage, pride, and fear. Knowings is about who you are. OwlSeek is about what you do. And for each one, there's a bird, representative image. For love, it is I am. For OwlSeek, it's leadership, power, and brilliance, represented by the eagle. For knowings, grace is I feel. For OwlSeek, it's transformation and change and difference, and it's represented by the dove. In knowings, forgiveness is I change. In OwlSeek, co-create is connection and evolution, and those are represented by the swan. In knowings, The intuition is I know, or I intuit. And in OwlSeek, it's the intuition of your values and trust, and it's represented by the owl and the nest. In knowings, courage is represented by the surrender. In OwlSeek, it's the shift and surrender represented by the bird, the raven. In knowings, pride and ego are represented by ego. OwlSeek is represented by the projection and pride, and the bird representative is the peacock. In knowings, fear is about the pain, and in OwlSeek, it's about force and control and fear, and the bird representative is the caged bird. End of chapter 4.